Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Narayanam Suragurum Jagadekanatham Bhakta Priyam Sakalaloka Namaskritancha Traigunya-varjitamajam Vibhumatyam Isham Vande Bhavagnam Amarasura Siddhavandyam Devam Narayanam Natva Sarvadosha Vivarjitam Paripurnam Gurumshchan Gitartam Akshami Leshataha Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening and good morning. I know folks are joining in from various parts of the world. So, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for a fantastic session on Gita and You, practical applications. So, we have a power-packed program starting off with Gita, the Essence of the Upanishads by me. Significance of number 18 in Sanatana Dharma by Dr. Suresh Kankanwadi. Metaphors in the Gita and what do they teach us by Dr. Neeta Kulkarni. Physical and mental health and well-being through the Gita by Dr. Anand, Dr. Sushrut, and Dr. Rajendra. This will be followed by an interactive Q&A session with the panel. So friends and fellow satsangis, this particular workshop starts off with the philosophy of the Gita. What is the ontology? What is the epistemology in Gita? And then it goes gradually towards the practical applications of putting Gita into our daily lives. Okay? And this is followed by the plenary summary of the message of the workshop by Swami Sri Gyananandji Maharaj. And I pay my obeisance to Swamiji, who is there in the group here. So, Namaste Swamiji, and we seek your blessings for us to start the workshop. So, before we start the workshop, just a couple of housekeeping rules. So, please keep your audio and video muted at all times, please. If you have any pressing questions during the workshop, please make a note of this in the chat forum. We have two of our colleagues jotting down all the questions. We will group them together and we will post it to the panel. Okay, so that's the introduction to this, and let's kick it. Let's start it off. Gita, the essence of the Upanishads. So let's think about the philosophical position of Gita in Vedanta Shastra. So there are three canonical texts of Vedantic philosophy. This is called Prasthana Trayi. It includes Brahma Sutra Prasthana, Gita Prasthana, and Upanishad Prasthana. So these three form the foundation of Vedanta Shastra. Gita Prasthana, over 700 verses, spread over 18 chapters, summarizes the philosophy of the Upanishads, which, as we all know, there is 10 primary Upanishads, some say. There are 108 Upanishads, some say. But if the Vedas are Ananta, Ananta vai Vedaha, so technically there must be infinite Upanishads. Then to understand the Gita and the Upanishads, how do we put it in context? What is the Tatparya Lingas? How do we understand and interpret the Upanishads in what context and so on? For us to get that kind of approach, we have the Vedanta Sutra, also called Brahma Sutra Prasthana. And there are 564 aphorisms in the Brahma Sutra. So you have the Sutra Prasthana, Gita Prasthana, and the Upanishad Prasthana. And as you can see from this figure, Gita holds the Upanishads and Sutras together. And there are a couple of very important points to note here. Upanishads is the Vedas, right? That is Apaurushaya, authorless, Apaurushayatvat Vedasya. And Mundaka Upanishad says, Vak Vivrutashta Vedaha. At the beginning of creation, Vedas come out of the breath of Brahman. Okay? So Vedas are authorless. Then you have Brahma Sutra Prasthana and Gita Prasthana, which is Paurusheya Granthas. And the composer of the Gita and the Vedanta Sutra is Lord Vedavyasa. So that gives you an overview of the Prasthana Trais and how Vedavyasa has composed sutras, Brahma Sutras, and he has composed the Mahabharata and the Gita, and he has documented the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata. So who is Vedavyasa then? Vedavyasa is incarnation of Lord Vishnu. When you look at Skanda Purana, what does it say? Narayanad vinishpannam jnanam krutayuge sthitam kinchittad anyata jatam tretayam dwapare apya Gautamasya rishe shapat Gautamasya rishe shapat jnane tu ajnanatam kate sankirna buddhayo devaha brahmarudra purassaraha sharanyam sharanam jagnuhu narayanam anamayam. So Chaturmukha and everybody go to Narayana at the end of Dwapara Yuga and says, look, the world is losing all the Vedas. Please come and rescue us. So Narayana takes avatara in Satyavati and Parasharas, and then he compiles all the Vedas. Okay? Much of the Vedas was lost at the end of the Dwapara Yuga. Vedavyasa compiles the Vedas into 4 shakas, as we all know, Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva. Each Veda has got Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishads. So Lord Vedavyasa is the compiler of the Vedas. He is also the compiler of the Vedanta Sutras, the Mahabharata, Gita, 18 Puranas, Brahmatarkas, Vyasa Nirukta, etc., etc. So, Vedavyasa, Krishna, Vishnu are all non-different from each other. So this we have to be very clear about this. So we have Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. We have Lord Vedavyasa who appears in Mahabharata and he has composed all this. Then you have the Vishnu. So in Gita chapter 4:9, Krishna himself says, Jadma karma cha me divyam yo veti tattvataha. So my avatars are divine. And Vishnu has taken infinite avatars. We know some documented in the Puranas and so on. So Vedavyasa, Krishna are the same. This is the beauty here. Vishnu's avatara Vedavyasa documents the conversation between his avatara Krishna to Arjuna. That is what is Srimad Bhagavad Gita all about. So let us think about Bhagavad Gita now. We say Srimad Bhagavad Gita is also called Gita Upanishads, right? So let us first think about Bhagavad Gita. What does Bhagavad Gita already actually mean? So, Bhagavad Gita. So that means what? Bhagavad, the song of Bhagavan, the song of Bhagavan, the song of God is called Bhagavad Gita. You have the word Bhagavan there. Who is Bhagavan? So the definition of Bhagavan is given in Vishnu Purana. Aishwaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashasaha shriyaha jnana vairagyashchaiva shannam bhaga iti ingana. The one who has full strength, full fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation in infinite proportion is called Bhagavan. And that Bhagavan is Krishna who speaks to, who addresses, who teaches Arjuna. Now let us look on the other side. Srimad Bhagavad Gita is also called Gita Upanishad. Why is it called Gita Upanishad? So let's think about this. You have Gita and the Upanishads. Upanishad, what does Upanishad itself mean? Upanisannam Brahma Tattvam Atreti Upanishad. So that is one of the etymologies of Upanishad. That body of text that gives us the knowledge of Brahman is called Upanishad. Upanishadayati, Upanishadana, sitting close to a guru and reading sacred scriptures is one meaning of Upanishad. The one body of text that removes ignorance is called Upanishads. Upa, Upari, Upara, which indicates above, excellent, elevated. So that body of text that elevates us, that lifts our consciousness to a higher platform, that is called Upanishads. So Gita is called as the Upanishads because it elevates us to that level. Okay, so that is one way of looking at it. Look at this the other way. We know that this chariot that Arjuna rides was given by Agni Deva. That chariot has got 4 horses. The Shastras tell us those horses' name was Saibya, Sugriva, Meghapushpa, Balahaka. Note the 4 horses that Krishna is holding. What are those 4 horses from a metaphorical sense? Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, and all the Upanishads that come with it. So here the metaphorical understanding of this pictorial representation of the Mahabharata battle is Krishna controls and protects the Vedas. And the essence of the Upanishads is also summarized in the Vedas. So that's another way of looking at this pictorially. Now here is another view of why Bhagavad Gita is called Gita Upanishad. Itihasa Purananam Panchamo Vedanam Vedaha says Srimadacharya. And in Skanda Purana it says Bharatam Panchamam Vedam Uttamam. Mahabharata is the 5th Veda, says Skanda Purana. And so does Srimad Madhvacharya in his work. So Mahabharata is the 5th Veda and its Upanishad is called the Bhagavad Gita. So if Rig Veda's Upanishad is Aitareya Upanishad, or if Atharvana Vedas is Mundaka, Mandukya and Prashna Upanishad, then Mahabharata, which is the 5th Veda, its Upanishad is called Bhagavad Gita. So friends, I hope we now have an understanding of why Bhagavad Gita and why it is called Gita Upanishad. So the philosophy of the Gita and the Upanishads basically asked existential questions. It is not for the faint-hearted. It is for the serious pursuer of philosophy. What is the cause of all causes? Where did I come from? What is this life? What happens after my death? Where do I go? Why am I suffering? The question is the Shvetashvatara Upanishad Rishi asked, Kim Karanam Brahma Kutasma Jata Jivama Kena Kvacha Sampratishta Adhishtitaha Kena Sukha Dukeshu Vartamahe Brahmavido Vyavastam. Beautiful questions. The Rishi answers in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. For us, Krishna, over 574 verses, answers those 84 questions posed by Arjuna addressing these fundamental questions. The question, of course, is, are we interested in these fundamental questions? Because currently we are completely surrounded by ignorance, as indicated in Mundaka Upanishad. Avidyayam antare vartamanaha swayamdiraha panditam manyamanaha janganyamanaha pariyanti mudaha niyamana ata yatha. This is our state, fully covered with ignorance. We got this ignorance fence called the ignorance around us, and we think we are very secure in this fence called the ignorance. We need to come out of it. And how do we come out of it? Bhagavad Gita is the guiding light for us to do that transition. And how does Bhagavad Gita approaches this problem? How did Krishna approaches this for us? So the ontology of the Upanishads, that is the enumeration of reals, is the Sankhya Yoga, which is the chapter 2 of Gita as we know. So what is this ontology or enumeration of reals? The first thing we need to understand, even before we understand the philosophy of the Gita, is what is out there? What are all the entities in this creation or in this existence? Okay? That idea, that grand vision of all of existence comes from the Upanishads. For example, Shvetashvatara Upanishad will say, Nya Agnyau Dvav Anisho Kshara Atmanav Ishate Devayekaha. Shvetashvatara Upanishad says there are only 3 entities in the whole of existence. There are the infinite jivas. There is the material world, jadas, and then there is the Brahman, also called as the Deva in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Mundaka Upanishad also captures similar sentiments. Dva, Suparna, Sayuja, Sakaya, Samanam, Vriksham, Parishashvajate. In this existence, there is the bird, 2 birds in a tree. There is one tree, one bird which is enjoying the material world. This is the Jiva. And there is the other silent witness, Krishna, who is a silent witness and seeing what this Jiva is doing. And that is what is going on here. This is Krishna, here is Brahman. Arjuna, here is the Jiva. And all the material wealth, bondage, our material bodies, wealth, possessions, all Arjuna's relatives, and so on and so forth, they all form the Jada components here. So the grand vision of the Upanishads is is immediately taken up by Krishna in Sankhya Yoga, and he enumerates these are all the things in existence, Arjuna. First, understand this before we go to the next levels of philosophy. The Brahman of the Upanishads is the Krishna of the Gita. So we have to be very, very clear about this. Yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat prayanti abhisham vishanti tad vijijnasasva tad brahmeti. Taittiriya Upanishad defines this Brahman is the one who is the creator of the universe. Atato brahma jijnasa Vedanta Sutra Vedavyasas very first aphorism. The ideas of Brahman comes again and again in the Upanishads. Look at it, Gita. You will see Brahman again and again discussed in the Gita. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena, Gantavyam, Brahmakarma Samadhina, Brahmanadaya. Om Tat Satiti Nirdeshaha Brahmana. So the Brahman comes again and again in the Upanishads, which is the supreme character of the Upanishads and in the Gitas. So what does that Brahman actually mean? And the etymology of Brahman is Atakasmad Uchate Brahmeti Bruhanto hi Asmin Gunaha. That supreme being who is all pervasive in time, space, and infinite, non-material, auspicious attributes. So that is the definition of Brahman, that being who is an abode of infinite auspicious attributes. And Sri Madhvacharya clarifies for us in his Gita Bhashya and in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya, Brahma Shabdashta Vishnaveva. Brahman means Vishnu. Why? Look at the word Vishnu. It is not a sectarian name. It is an etymological name that gives a characterization of the supreme being. What does Vishnu mean? What is the etymology of Vishnu? Vishal Vyaptau. That entity that pervades. The entity that pervades everywhere. The entity that pervades all of time, space, and attributes is one etymology of Vishnu, which is what? Brahman. Okay. And again, in Gita, you will see the words Om appear again. What is Om? There are millions of etymological understandings of Om. One simple etymology is Uyate. Uyate iti Om. Otatvachihi Omkaraho Vektaso Tadguno Tatam. That which has got infinite attributes attached to it. That is called Om. And Krishna says, guys, Om is my name. Om Tat Sad iti Nirdeshaha. So the Samanvaya of Shastra, when you look at the Vedanta Sutra, when you look at the Upanishads, and when you look at the Gita, which is Prasthana Trayi in action in this particular slide, all indicate that Krishna is the Brahman of the Upanishads. So there should be no doubts in that for any of us here in this audience. So this Krishna is the supreme independent principle. So that is another key message of the Gita. Shvetashvatara Upanishad starts with that Nya, Ajna, Dvav, Anisha. Jada and Jivas are Anishas. Anishas means what? They are dependent. Kshara Atmanav Ishate Deva Ekaha. The one that controls these two is called the Deva. Primary definition of Krishna given in Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Again, Madhvacharya and Tattva Sankhyanā, he gives Swatantram, Aswatantram cha dvividam tattvam ishyate swatantro Bhagavan Vishnuhu. That independent principle is called Vishnu. And of course, in Gita, Krishna has told so much about himself. Mattaha parataram nanyatasti kinchit jananjaya mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana hiva and so on. And celebrated in the 15th chapter, verse 16 to 18, the supreme independence of Krishna. Okay, so again, Krishna, the supreme independent principle, is another concept of the Upanishads that Krishna deals for us in the Gita. And who is this Brahman? He is the creator of the universe. Atato Brahma Jignasa. Then therefore inquiry into Brahman shall begin, said Vedavyasa. And immediately he gave a definition. Janmadhyasya yataha. He who is the creator of the universe is the definition of Brahman. And of course, our dear Krishna in Bhagavad Gita talks about this in great details across various chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, that he is the creator of the universe. I am the creator of the universe. He illustrates to Arjuna. And I just want to take a verse in 15th chapter, first verse. Urdhva Moolam, Adahashakam, Ashwattam, Prahuravyayam, Chandamsi yasya paranani yastam veda saveda vit. Gita chapter 15, first verse. Look at Katha Upanishad. Exactly the same verse. Urdhva mulo avak shakaha yesho ashwattaha sanatanaha tadeva shukram tad brahma tadeva amrutam uchyate tasmin lokaha shritaha sarve tadu na atyeti kashtana yetadvai tat is what Yama teaches Nachiketa. Exactly the same verse. So, what I'm trying to impress here is some of the verses that you see in Gita are exactly the same verses you will see in many Upanishads. Primarily in Katha Upanishad, there are many verses which are identical. Okay, so look at this Urdhva. So, let us think about this Urdhva. What is Urdhva? Urdhva means that which is above. Urdhvaha, Uttamaha, Sarvataha. That is the meaning of Urdhva. Urdhva means that which is the highest among all entities. And we have just seen that is Brahman. Urdhvaha Vishnuhu. Gita Bhashya of Srimad Acharya. Reference from Taittiriya Aranyaka. Urdhvo Pavitro Vajani Vasu Amrutam Asmi Dravinam Savarchasam. That's the definition of Taittiriya Aranyaka tells who is this Urdhva and establishes that Urdhva is Vishnu. Mula means root. So this origin of this universe takes its root from this Urdhva, who is the highest being. This root is the most important component of the tree. It may have primary and secondary roots. It supports the tree. It holds the tree. It sustains the tree. The rest of the tree is dependent on the root. Without the root, there is no tree. Without Vishnu, without Krishna, there is no material world. There is no Jiva scope at all. Okay, so the verse there, the Samanvaya again of Gita 15:1 and Katha Upanishad is 100%. Okay. So the Shastra tells us the primary root of the creation of the universe is the Vishnu Tattva. The secondary roots, Adaha Shakam, the secondary roots, what are they? Mula Prakriti and the Abhimani Devata of Mula Prakriti, that is Sri Tattva or Lakshmi, is the secondary root in this equation. So the cosmology in the Upanishads and the Gita are extremely beautiful. So we have just touched upon Urdhva Mulaha Adaha Shakaha. Okay. Now let us go to a little bit higher level. It says Yeshaha Ashwataha. Urdhva Mulo Arvak Shakaha Ashwataha. And what does it say here? Sanatanaha, here Prahur Avyayam. So Sanatanaha and Avyayam. Gita says this Ashwata, this world can be Ashwata, but it is Avyayam. And similarly, in Katha Upanishad, Yama teaches Nachiketa that this world is called Ashwata and it is Sanatanaha. And that is the beauty of the cosmology of the Upanishads, which is so beautifully described to us by Krishna. So we are now looking at this inverted tree. Like, so some folks think, why an inverted tree analogy? The inverted tree analogy is to indicate Vishnu is the highest. Then you have the Chit Prakriti and Jada Prakriti. And then you have the trunk, which is all other Abhimani Devatas and all the branches. And then there is a modification of the material stuff that happens from Jada Prakriti. So this branching out that is happening, this is the genealogy of the cosmology of the universe, which is exactly what the 24 tattvas that I have shown you here on the left that indicates. So just this Jada Prakriti is interesting. This Jada Prakriti or Mula Prakriti or the primordial matter or the point of singularity before the Big Bang, that is called Jada Prakriti. That is Avyayam. That is indestructible. Data Yata Purvam Akalpayat, says the Rig Veda. That primordial matter in every cycles of creation, it will modify and make other things. And again, during dissolution, it will become primordial matter. But the primordial matter is always there. Avyayam, Sanatanaha. But this modified material is Ashwataha. Ashwataha. Ashwa means, Taha means tomorrow. Means not. Taha means remaining. So Shwa is tomorrow. So that which does not remain the same tomorrow. Meaning this material universe is constantly changing, like a horse which is constantly twitching and changing. Yeah, Ashwa, Taha, Ashu, Va moves very fast. So these ideas of dynamic universe of Brahmanda and our body, which is Pindanda, made up of stardust and also constantly changing. And we know in all those famous verses of chapter 2 how Krishna teaches us the cosmology in the Upanishads and the Gita. Okay, so we're coming to the final few slides. Krishna quotes the Katha Upanishad itself to teach the eternality of souls. And this is beautiful. Krishna is the controller of all the Apaurusha Vedas. They come out from his breath. He says, Vedanta Krit Vedavid Evecha Aham in chapter 15. So he says the Vedas all the time simultaneously, the whole of Vedas instantaneously. And for Arjuna's benefit, he actually quotes the Katha Upanishad. Look at this verse in Gita 2:20. Na jayate mriyate va kadachit na ayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaha ajo nityaha shashvato ayam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Talking about the indestructibility of the souls. The same thing of Katha Upanishad of Krishna Yajurveda. Na jayate mriyate va pipachchit na ayam kutaschit babhuva kashchit ajo nityaha shashvato ayam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Identical verses. So here, Krishna, when he is teaching the eternality of souls and other great things, he says, look, I'll also give you evidence from the Vedas which I control. And he actually quotes the Katha Upanishad in this particular verse. Look at this verse, the very first verse that starts the philosophy of the Gita, 2:12. Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme jaradipaha nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarvevayamataha param. We are all eternal. Just as how I have lived forever, you will also live forever. We are eternal beings, says Krishna, and clarifies what is said in the Katha Upanishad. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman tam atmastam ye anupashyanti tiraha tesham shantihi shashvatihi na idaresham. Beautiful verse where Yama says, that being, supreme being is Nityo Nityanam. He is eternals of the eternals. That particular question may confuse us. Is there two aspects of eternality? No, there is eternal is only one. Clarifies in Gita 2:12, Krishna, and says, when Katha Upanishad says Nityo Nityanam, what it means is, I am the controller of the eternality of the souls also. The eternality of souls is also dependent on me. So those are all the ideas that Krishna talks about. So when we read the Gita, we should read the Upanishads. We should have the Vedanta Sutra next to us. We should study the scriptures from a Prasthana Thrice perspective. This is what all the Acharyas have done. Madhvacharya has done that. Sankaracharya has done that. So we should adopt and get inspired by these Acharyas and read the messages of Gita, taking Upanishads and Gita together. Okay. So now if you look at the Karma Yoga, now you look at the Karma Yoga of Bhagavad Gita is the same as the Karma Yoga taught in the Upanishads. Okay, so the Jiva is there, right? The Jiva has to do some actions. That is what is Karma Yoga all about. Isha Upanishad, very first verse, first two verses. Isha Vasyam Idang Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bunjitaha Ma Gridaha Kasyasviddanam Kurvanneve Iha Kuru Jijiji Vishet Shatang Shabaha Evan Tvai Na Anyato Asti Na Karma Lipyate Nare. This second line is the summary of the Karma Yoga that Krishna talks over several chapters. Kurvanneve Iha Kuru Karmani. Okay, so he says this whole world, the first line says this whole world belongs to Brahman. You don't own anything. So be happy with what you have is the first sentence there. The second one says is when you are alive in this world, when you have a gross material body, when you are doing some actions, offer it to Paramatma. Iha there. Kuruvan e iva iha. Kuruvan eva iha. Iha there has several connotations in that Upanishad. It could be in this place, it could be in this world, it could be here, it could be now. But here, what is happening in Ishavasya Upanishad? Swayambhuva Manu is bowing to Yajnanamaka Paramatma, his grandson, and asking him to protect him from Hiranyaksha. So that Swayambhuva Manu is saying, I will offer all my actions to you who are in front of me, to the Lord, as a sacrifice to the Lord. So that is the key message of Karma Yoga, right? That karma that is spoken so beautifully everywhere in the Gita. We are all familiar with 247 there. So again, the philosophy of the Upanishads is what Krishna is expounding as a philosophy to Arjuna. Okay, so what has gone wrong for us? If the Upanishads have said so many great things, we are not doing anything. So what has gone wrong for us? Mundaka Upanishad captures this. This bird, two birds in this tree, Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakaya Samana Vriksham Parishashva Jate. So there are these two trees, guys, who are there in this world. Thayor Anyaha Pippalam Swadatti Anashnan Anyaha Abhichakashiti. There is this bird here covered with ignorance, and it is eating these material fruits, and it is not being happy. It is not getting happiness at all. It is trying to eat these bitter fruits. And it is not, it thinks that bitter fruits are the most sweetest things, but it is still not happy. Whereas this guy, Brahman, who is sitting very close to him as an antaryamin, as a silent witness, he's saying, Anashnan anyaha abhichakashiti. This Brahman is not eating anything, but he is looking there very, with his eyes blinking wide open and say, what is this guy doing? What is this jiva doing? This jiva is doing what? Samane vrikshe purusho nimagnaha anishaya shochati mukhyamanaha. This jiva is suffering because of all the ignorance. There is various ignorance that the jiva has. When is it going to come out of this? Jushtam yada pashyati anyamisham asya mahimanam iti vita shokaha. When this jiva, instead of facing the material world, it starts facing towards Brahman, and then understands that it is the Brahman who is the controller of its destiny, and that it is the Brahman who will look after him, and that this Brahman is an amazing being. Asya mahimanam. When he deals that, that mahimanam brings devotional service, that devotion will bring divine grace, and when the divine grace happens, then there is a scope for this jiva bird to be liberated from this. So the teachings of the Gita is primarily indicated, yes, we can, with the proper conduct of our samsara, of our proper conduct of life. But the higher philosophy of our Gita is to actually get away from this quagmire called as the samsara, that we break this bandhana and then go towards Krishna and be in his constant companionship in Vaikuntha. That is, we are liberated. How do we reach that liberation? That is the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, which is inspired by the Upanishads. So in summary, Gita is the summary of the Upanishads. The understanding the relationship between Brahman, Krishna, Jiva, Arjuna, and the rest of us, and the material world is the Vedic philosophy. It is not some dry empirical speculation. It is something that we need for our own progress. But what has happened to us? We are currently entangled in this material world called the samsara, which is full of suffering. We may think we are having a good time, but essentially we are suffering. If we need to get out of this situation, the steps are to acquire correct knowledge, realize that there is this higher power that is controlling us, develop that devotional service, obtain Krishna's grace, who is the only being who can liberate us. So this message of the Gita, over 700 verses, is spread across 80 chapters. And Vedavyasa has documented this over 18 chapters, the conversation between Krishna, who has said 574 verses, Arjuna, who has spoken 84 verses, Sanjaya, who has spoken 41 verses, Dhritarashtra, who has spoken 1 verse, over 18 chapters. So the question is, why did Vedavyasa and Krishna take 18 chapters to discuss this great philosophy of the Upanishad? There must be a significance to this number 18, isn't it? That is the topic for our next speaker, Dr. Suresh Kunkanwadi. Suresh, over to you.
Thank you, Madhu. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody. We'll get started into this segment. Manojavam Maruta Tulyavegam Jitendriyam Buddhimatam Varishtam Vatatmajam Vanariyuta Mukhyam Sri Ramadutam Sharanam Prapadde. So as we move to the next slide, the question Madhuji has asked is what's the significance of number 18? And thanks, Madhuji, in fact, for a clear, concise summary of this vast amount of information. We talked about Bhagwan, and a point I think we should remember is that throughout the Bhagavad Gita, we have Arjuna Uvacha, we have Dhritarashtra Uvacha, we have Sanjaya Uvacha, we don't have Krishna Uvacha, we have Bhagwan Uvacha. And what is this relationship between this number 18 and Bhagwan is the question that we will try to address in this section. So we'll first spend a couple of minutes on quantification. So why quantify is the question. What's the relationship between numbers and this spiritual teachings that we are talking about? What we need to realize is that this is experiential science. Unlike material science, where quantification numbers come out naturally, experiential science needs quantification such that it can give some tangible measurements to abstract concepts. Human sense observations, experiences, how do we convey them? And how do we make sure that there is no ambiguity when this information is conveyed from one to another? The answer is in being able to quantify it, being able to assign numbers. And of course, our ancestors had mastered this technique of quantification and communication such that even without any assistance of writing, they were able to, over thousands of years, transmit the exact information. And of course, as we know today in material science, in today's modern methodology, quantification is a fundamental construct. So before we go deeper into the 18% quantification in our in the Sanatana Dharma perspective, just an overview of what 18 signifies. From a numerological point of view, 18 is a symbol of independence and humanitarianism, building something which is lasting. In Jewish tradition, it means life. Angel numbers say that 18 is something that signifies new beginnings and positive changes. Culturally, 18 in certain parts of the world, it codifies the transition from an adulthood to being an adult, bringing in new responsibilities and freedom. Just look at some of the words here and keep them at the back of your mind as we go into the details of 18 in our context, in the context of Sanatana Dharma. The first Mangalacharana shloka Acharya says in Gita Bhashya says, Devam Narayanam Natva Sarva Dosha Vivarjitam. Just the first two words if we pick. Devam and Narayanam. Devam comes from the root word Divikridayam, which means full of infinite auspicious attributes. And therefore, as Badarayana puts it in Brahma Sutra as well, the one who is responsible for the eightfold dispensation of the universe, that is Devam. So Devam is the first word. The second word that comes up there is Narayana. Now, Narayana also means an abode of infinite auspicious attributes, just like Deva would mean. In addition, Narayana also means, Ara means defects, Na Ara, the one who is devoid of all defects. So this entity who is full of infinite auspicious attributes and being so is therefore devoid of all defects. This is whom we call as Narayana. And if we assign numbers to the word Narayana, Na signifies 10, Ra is 2, Ya is 1, and Na is 5. Let's just add them together. 10, 2, 1, and 5 gives us the number 18. So 18 is Narayana as we see it on this slide. If we move to the next slide, there are fundamentally, we talked about these infinite auspicious attributes which are not material. So how do we perceive and know about something which is not material? Shastras fundamentally tell us that there are three means of doing it. We have pratyaksha, we have anumana, and we have agamas to rely on. And in the agamas, if we ask the question that acquiring this vidya, what are the means at my disposal? The answer is, there are 4 Vedas, there are 3 Itihasa Granthas and Purana, there are 7 Vedangas, Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nairukta, Chandas, Jyotisha and Dharmashastra, and there are 3 Mimamsas. Let's just add them together. 7, 3, 4, and 4 gives us 18. So there are 18 means at our disposal to pursue this path. If we look at some of the Shruti texts themselves, we talked about Katha Upanishad and the Hamsa Gayatri in Katha Upanishad. In order to illustrate the concept of Antaryaman, uses a number of shabdas, words, examples, or entities. And how many of them are they used there? There are 18 such shabdas which the Hamsa Gayatri uses to convey the concept of Antaryaman. How many verses does the Purusha Sukta of Yajurveda have? How many verses does Ishavasya Upanishad have? And how many tattvas are there in the Shatapada Brahmana? The answer to all these questions is 18 again. How many Puranas and Upapuranas did Vedavyasa give us? 18. How many verses are contained in the Bhagavata Purana? It is 1,000 times 18, it's 18,000. So 18 comes to us from many different angles to convey a very, very clear, concise, and subtle message. In the Ishavasya Upanishad, as we just heard, Vishnu takes the avatara of Yajnanamaka Paramatma on being prayed to by Swayambhu Manu. Apart from Yajna being the name of Vishnu himself, as we will see in the next slide, Yajna, the word has more meanings attributed to it. It means Deva Puja, it means Sangati Karana, it means Dana or sacrifice. And Krishna himself says very clearly in the 18th chapter, Yajno dane tapaschaiva pavanani manishin. One has to perform yajna, dana, and tapa, even if one is one has acquired a significant amount of knowledge. There's no stopping of doing any of these activities to achieve Narayana, the final abode. And if one has to perform this yajna in its Vedic, in its entirety, as described in our Shastras, the question is how many people are needed to perform this yajna? The answer is 18. And it's not just 18, a number plucked from somewhere. It is again 18 here in order to signify a very important message and to remind us of something. So then, if we move forward into the current context of Mahabharata per se and see what 18 means in Mahabharata as we look at it. So the first question there is, what are the attributes one should be having in order to pursue this path towards Narayana, towards liberation? Well, Mahabharata tells us that there are 18 such attributes that one should be having, and these are represented by the main protagonists. They are Pandavas. Yudhishthira representing dharma, which is one attribute. Bhimasena represents 10 different attributes: Dashaprameti, Bhakti, Jnana, Vairagya, Prajna, Meda, Dhriti, Sthiti, Yoga, Prana, and Bala. Shravana, Manana, and Nidhyasana are 3 attributes represented by Arjuna: Sheela and Vinaya, Nakula and Sahadeva. Veda Vidya is represented by Draupadi, and Veda Vedya is Krishna himself. And if we just add them all together, there are 18 such attributes. More different questions pertaining to Mahabharata. How many Parvas are there in Mahabharata? 18. How many days did the war last? 18. What's the strength of the armies put together? 18 Akshohinis. And more interestingly, what is the construct of each Akshohini? It consists of 21,870 chariots and elephants. And if we add 2, 1, 8, 7, and 0, we get 18. The 65,610 horses. And if we add 6, 5, 6, and 1, we get 18. There are 1,09,350 foot soldiers. And if we just add them all together, lo and behold, we get the number 18 again. So 18 is simply staring at us from many, many different directions to convey a very important message. And of course, it's right at the beginning of this war that the greatest possible teaching of Bhagavad Gita takes place. And on the next slide, let's look at 18 from Bhagavad Gita, from the construct of Bhagavad Gita per se. How many chapters does Bhagavad Gita have? 18. Duryodhana, in his conversation with Dronacharya, takes the names of Pandavas. And if we ask how many Pandavas did Duryodhana name, there are 18 of them. Further in the same chapter, there are names of Pandavas who blew their couches to signify readiness for the war. And if one asks the question as to how many Pandavas are named in this context, the answer is 18. We just talked about chapter 2 a little earlier. The question is, chapter 2 teaches us 4 yogas: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Dhyana Yoga. How many verses does it have? 72. 4 yogas, 72 verses, meaning 18 into 4 is 72. 18 again comes out just looking at chapter 2 itself. The route to liberation, some 3 fundamental questions. If you can reduce it to 3 fundamental questions, it's important for us to know what's this samsara that we are bound in? What's this kshetra? Who is the owner of this? Who is this kshetrajna? And what do I need to be in order to come out of this bondage? Answer perhaps is, I need to be a sthita prajna. Now look at the beauty here. The concept of kshetra and kshetrajna in chapter 13 is described in the first 18 verses of chapter 13. And the answer to the question of sthita prajna by Arjuna is answered by Krishna in the last 18 verses of chapter 2. And to top this all off, if Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all agamas, chapter 15 is considered to be the very essence of the entire teaching of the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. And the first 18 verses of chapter 15 convey the entire essence of Bhagavad Gita. So 18 again and again is coming back to us and telling us that there's a very subtle and clear message that 18 is trying to convey to us. But a question remains, why just pick 18? Could it not have been any other number? Couldn't it have been 16, 17, etc.? The answer to this question, in order to find the answer to this question, we need to turn to Prashna Upanishad. To a question by Sukeshu Bharadwaja, Pippalada Rishi says, Sa pranam srujata, pranat shraddham, kham vayur jyotir apaha, prithivim indriyam manaha, annam annad viryam tapo mantraha, karma loka lokeshu chanamacha. Pippalada Rishi is telling prana, jiva, you know, you are bound by 15 conditions. There are 15 different aspects which are binding you to this samsara. And for you to be liberated, jiva, number 16, is the representation of the jiva, has to overcome these 15 boundary conditions such that it reaches Vishnu, who is number 18. So therefore, 18, as described in Prashna Upanishad, is nothing else but representing Vishnu himself. So 18, therefore, in many different aspects, is conveying this one message: Vishnu, Narayana, Krishna, Deva, any different name, many different names, but a single message that is being conveyed by this number 18. And as we go towards the end of this section in the next slide, which is the last slide, so what does being with Vishnu mean? What does this 18 mean? Very wonderfully put together by the very last verse of Bhagavad Gita, where Sanjay says, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, Tatra Sri Vijayo Bhuti Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Where there is Krishna, there is glory, victory, prosperity, and quality. What does it actually mean to us? And again, we talked about Katha, where we say Shariram Rathamevacha. If this body is the vehicle for us to achieve and make progress towards liberation, what is 18 telling us? So we need to understand 18, and we need to actually imbibe and inculcate 18 into everything that we do. 18 signifying blending of material and spiritual aspects. 18 is signifying the state of total dependence of us as human beings. 18 is telling us that, guys, this is experiential science. And if you want to understand that Brahma Tattva, that Vishnu, it can be only known through Vedas and the other Sadagamas. 18 is telling us about our obligation to our duties. The various attributes that one needs to cultivate in order to progress in this path is what 18 telling us. It's also telling us what are the fences, 15 of them, which one has to overcome in order to go further. So one fundamentally needs to fight a battle from these fences, against these fences from within and without, and be able to win this battle. To win means Jaya. And again, if we attribute numbers to Jaya and Ya, it is 1 and 8, and it tells us it is 18 again. And Jaya, as we know, is another name of Mahabharata. So therefore, Mahabharata contains Bhagavad Gita, which shows us the path towards righteousness, and we attain there with the divine grace, is in one way put together in a simplistic fashion, the real meaning of 18. So 18 should actually, whenever we come across number 18, maybe climbing up the steps of a mountain, or in any place of a temple, or anywhere that we come across number 18, it in fact is telling us the significance and the essence of our entire philosophy. If one number, 18, is conveying so much, what are the other metaphors that we come across in Bhagavad Gita? And what is it that they are telling us is what Dr. Neeta Kulkarni will discuss in the next session. Thank you all. And Neetaji, over to you.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Krishnaya Namaha. My pranams to Sri Gyananandji Maharaj as well. Thank you, Sureshji. So you, Sureshji, mentioned that this is Bhagavad Gita as a path to righteousness. So let us see what metaphors in Bhagavad Gita that Sri Krishna has explained beautifully to give us this message or give us this path to righteousness. So I will look at what are the metaphors in control of senses, what are in control of mind, so that is Jnanendriyas, and of Manas, and what are the metaphors to describe Nishkama Karma, again a key message of Bhagavad Gita that we've heard in the conference, the Gieo Gita conference, knowledge, and also about Vishnu. So first of all, the biggest metaphor is the war itself. It's an inner battle that we are all fighting every day, in the samsara, as Madhusudan Ji was mentioning, it's the suffering. So war itself is a big metaphor. So let's go on to the next slide, please. So what is a metaphor? Or in Sanskrit, it's also called as Rupakalankara. So anything that has an abstract quality or a condition or a notion is very difficult to describe and teach someone else. So we use a material emblem of this quality to make it easier for everyone to understand. And that is what Sri Krishna is trying to, is helping us in trying to understand this abstract quality by giving these metaphors or examples. And so there are some overlaps of these in analogies and similes that I'm going to show today, which give us some important messages. Yeah, next slide, that's fine. So the first thing is, let's look at control of senses, because that is one of the key ones to start off. Why am I saying it's key? Because there are so many shlokas in Bhagavad Gita that describe or talk about control of senses. See, I've numbered them. There are numbers that I've put over there if anyone wants to look at those. And also sense objects as well. It's very, very important. So again, there's one shloka which says, what is the hierarchy? So sense organs, then the mind, then the intellect, and then soul. Okay, so that's how the arrow goes upwards. So indriyani paranyahu indriyebhyah param manaha manasastu para buddhe buddhe parasastu saha. So we have to remember that So we get inputs from various senses. We also learn that way. We get knowledge that way. But we have to remember that whatever we're doing should take us towards Shreyas, as Katha Upanishad mentions, not towards prayas. So all these sense organs should help us go towards prayas. Why? Because that would help us achieve, which has mental benefits, physical benefits, and also spiritual benefits. Now, Anandji will take us into more details about these when he talks about health related to, health problems related to these three. Another one I want to describe is sat-nav. Now, Sureshji mentioned path to righteousness. So when we are driving somewhere, we use sat-nav, okay, which means we have to put in a destination and it helps us, guides us to take us to that destination. We have to put in the right destination. That's the key thing. So we have to know where we are going. So we should have that aim that we want to learn knowledge, have that knowledge to reach Sri Krishna. So the other sat-nav, isn't it interesting that it could also mean Sat Ki Now, okay? The boat that takes us towards Sat, okay? So sat-nav, so sat-nav, which is an analogy we can use in our day-to-day life and make sure that we keep it on the path, not let our senses take this car or our body towards different sensory things. Otherwise, we won't reach our destination. Next slide, please. So what do we have to do? I've said it's important to control these senses, but what do we have to do? So we have to be undisturbed when there are multiple sensory inputs to our mind. So two examples. Apuryamanam achala prathishtam samudramapah pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sa shanti mapnoti na kamakami. Just as ocean remains undisturbed by incessant flow of waters from rivers merging into it, so we have to stay unmoved despite the flow of desirable objects. I think a very good example nowadays is with social media. So many social media, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, X, which used to be Twitter, so many channels on television, so many advertisements, everything comes into us, but we have to know what is important for us and we have to stay steady. Similarly, we have to withdraw our senses from these sensual pleasures because they're not leading to Shreyas. If they're not leading to Shreyas, then we have to withdraw them. So again, very good example, day-to-day example is that we see in temples as well is kurma. So yada samharate chayam kurmongani va sarvashaha indriyan indriyarthebhyaha tasya pradnya pratisthita. So we have to withdraw like the limbs of a tortoise. When tortoise is shocked, it takes all its limbs into itself. And that's what we have to do with our senses as well when we have all these that we are facing, when we face all these sensual pleasures. So that's what we have to do. Okay, then example of the river I have put in there, that the rivers are like sense objects and this ocean is like our mind. We have to keep it steady or still. All right, next slide, please. Yeah, if we go on to the next slide, please. So, okay, we have to do that. But what happens if we control 4 or 5, 4 out of the 5 and not control 1? So we may be controlling hearing, sight, smell, touch, but don't control our taste one. So we'll end up eating too much, our health will be affected, and that can affect mind. So many things can happen. So even if we don't control 1, it will be like our intellect can go astray, like the example given here by Sri Krishna is like a boat going astray because of the strong winds. Okay, so indriyanam hicharatam yanmanonu vidhiyate tadasya harati pradnya vayurnavamivambasi. So like the wind takes away the boat. So our mind will be swept away even if we don't control one of those senses. So next thing is Arjuna is asking on our behalf. Like Maharajji was telling us this morning in his lecture, Arjuna is a nimitta matram. He's asking questions on our behalf for us to understand everything. Chanchalam himana Krishna pramathi balavadrudam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. Our mind is so restless, so fickle. We want to do everything. We want to watch television. We want to go on the internet. We want to do activities, games, play with children, do our work. So many things to do. And our mind is turbulent. It's very strong. It's pulling us everywhere. It's not possible to control it. Like the control of wind. We cannot control wind. So we cannot control, Krishna, what should I do? I cannot control it. It's going everywhere. So this is a question for all of us in everyday life. And this is what Gita is telling us, how we can use Gita in everyday life. This is one of the examples. So we all know the answer that Sri Krishna gives. Asamshayam mahabaho manodirnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. By practice and detachment, it can be controlled. Yes, it's not easy. Sri Krishna agrees that it is not easy, but it's by practice and detachment that we can control it. So next question. And how do we do it? How is we should be like a lamp in a windless place that does not flicker. That is the mind of a disciplined yogi. Okay, it's not just for meditation. You can think it is the meditation part, but we can use it daily life, even if we have to concentrate on small pieces of jobs. So we can use this example. So whenever you see a diya, you should remember this one. Yatha dipo nivatasthah nengate sopama smrata yogino yatachittasya yunjato yogamatmana. It's important to have that clear mind. Then what? You can focus well. If you can focus well, you can achieve your target. Target in education, let be work or spiritual. Of course, spiritual being the highest and the best one. So we can achieve much, to a higher level when we can concentrate well. So we have to be able to concentrate. So we talked about the sense part or the sense organs, jnanendriyas. Let's look at the karmendriya or karma. Okay. So we have again seen some of these examples in today morning's quiz competition where everyone took part. So again, the key one for karma, key message from Bhagavad Gita is about nishkama karma or doing your duty with detachment. So key one is 5:10, which we know, brahmanya dhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate nasapapena padmapatram ivambasa. Like water droplet does not stick to lotus leaf. We should be like that. We should be untouched. If we are doing a prescribed duty, the duty that we are all meant to do, the proper ones, we should not worry. We should be detached. Okay. So like the water droplet on the lotus leaf. There are two more key verses from Bhagavad Gita which talk about the same principle. Is Mai Sarvani Karmani Sanyasya Dhyatma Chetasa Nirashir Nirmamo Bhutva Yudhyasva Vigatajwaraha. And also in second chapter 248, Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya. So Sangam Tyaktva is a key word there, abandoning all attachment. Now you might say, what sort of karma is Sri Krishna asking us to do? He's not left any of the questions unanswered, what come to our mind in Bhagavad Gita. He again described this karma. What is a sattvika karma in chapter 18? So he said in 1823, he clearly says, Niyatam sangarahitam ragadvesha kritam afalas pepsuna karma yatat satvika muchyate. So the karma, the prescribed duty that we do should be according to the scriptures, free from attachment and aversion and done without a desire for rewards. And it should be done as per the varna and ashrama that we are in, without thinking of success or defeat, as a prayer to Lord. So all the karmas that we do should be done as prayer to Lord. I won't go through the Rajasic and Tamasic. You can look it up. So I'm just highlighting what we need to do. How do we do the karma? We have to do karma with knowledge, with the right knowledge. Knowledge is the key. And again, so Sri Gyananandji Maharaj has explained this morning and how that knowledge takes away the ignorance or the doubts of Arjuna that Sri Krishna asks him at the end. So let's look at some of the examples. Fire of knowledge. So he describes it as a fire. Yathaidhansi samidhogni bhasmasat kurute Arjuna jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. So like the fire burns wood to ashes, fire of knowledge burns all our reaction to material activities. So it takes away our bad karmas, takes it all away. Second one is about jnana plavenaiva, so boat of divine knowledge. So it describes knowledge, divine knowledge, as a boat. It's the boat that takes all of us, it's describing as a sinners, but all of us who've done all these bad karmas, it can take us all across the ocean of this material existence. It's the sword of knowledge, or jnana sinatmanaha. So again, that is the one that any doubts that we have about this path or the right knowledge is taken away by the sword of knowledge. You can cut it off by boat of knowledge. Two great examples about the light and knowledge. One is like sunrise. As sunrise takes away the darkness on this earth, that's how we should remember that knowledge takes away our ignorance. And same, jnana deepena bhasvata. So the lamp also, the light from this lamp should take away the darkness of our ignorance. So we saw some examples of ignorance in today's quiz, and different types of ignorance as well. So those were metaphors as well. So knowledge is key. That's why we have got so many metaphors describing knowledge, the right knowledge. Okay, next slide, please. One before. Yeah. So the knowledge, again, what is the right knowledge? So this question, you might be thinking, okay, you're saying knowledge is important. What is that right knowledge? Sri Krishna again describes right knowledge in 18th chapter. So what is sattvic knowledge? So sattvic knowledge is the only one to understand that there's only one imperishable entity, and that is apprehended in all different beings of several types. I think what we have to understand is this knowledge that Madhusudanji has described in his first talk, all of it, all the attributes, infinite auspicious attributes, all pervasiveness, that Bhagavan supports everything. He's independent, he's eternal. We cannot list them. Even Sri Lakshmi does not know the amount of attributes that Vishnu has. We should remember that knowledge that is described in chapter 15, last 5 shlokas. If you cannot read the whole of Bhagavad Gita, you cannot read everything. So you can read chapter 15, at least the last 5 shlokas of chapter 15. Okay, next slide, please. So where does that lead us to? So that's sattvic knowledge. I mentioned the supporter of all of us. So there's one very, very good metaphor to describe this. Mattah parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. So like beads are supported in a necklace by the thread. We're all connected, although the thread may not be seen, but the thread is there supporting these beads. So Sri Krishna is supporting all of us, not just the jivas, everything that is around us. So it supports the entire universe. And you can see what happens if that thread is cut. You can see in the picture next to us here, in this on this slide, everything falls apart. Okay, so it's important for us to understand this. And Sri Krishna said this himself in Bhagavad Gita. So it's very, very clear that he is the highest person. So there's one more shloka which says similar thing is in chapter 11. Pitasi lokasya characharasya tvamasya pujasyasya gurur gariyan natvat samostya vyadikha kuthonya lokatraye pratima prabhaya. No one is equal to me. No one is, this Arjuna is saying, no one is equal to you. No one is greater than you. So you cannot compare Vishnu to anyone else. Okay, so again, the key one to remember. So again, I'm going back to the sat-nav example and try and put the right destination to get there. So we have to have that right destination, which is Vishnu. Okay, next slide. So in summary, metaphors are used to explain abstract ideas. And remember that remember the metaphor when you are in a particular life situation. So if you want to stay calm in a turbulent situation, I'm not talking about physical, mental as well. Remember that ocean example where rivers are coming into the ocean and ocean stays very calm. The other way around, remember the Gita message when these objects of phenomenon are observed. For example, if there's a sunrise, remember that, oh, yes, it describes the ignorance is taken away by this knowledge, which is like sunlight. You remember, kurmonganiva, okay? Withdraw when you've got too many sensory inputs which you don't need. Take it away. Multiple metaphors of knowledge, which means jnana, for having the right knowledge, is very important. Again, there are many more metaphors in Bhagavad Gita that I have not listed them here. So when you read, look out for those metaphors. Okay, so doing that, we will learn more. So with that, I would say, as I mentioned, that this right knowledge is required to help us with our physical, mental, and spiritual health. Anandji and Sushruji will go through some question and answer sessions to take us through and answer some of those questions, how that can be achieved. Over to Sushruji and Anandji.
Namaste. My pranams to Maharajji. Gurubhyo Namah Hari Om. Devam Narayanam Natva Sarvadosha Vivarjitam Paripurnam Gurum Sham Gita Vakshami Leshataha. Good evening, friends. We are having a wonderful series of presentations here. We have seen how Gita and Upanishads tie up with each other, numerology and the significance of number 18, and all the metaphors that we need to use in our day-to-day life to achieve that number 18 and reach the Lord. So we thought we'll mix it up and have a slightly different format for a change. Usually as a surgeon, the anesthetists are always grilling us. So here we have our resident anesthetist, Dr. Anand. Welcome, Anandji. And as a surgeon, I am going to put him on the spot and ask him some questions. Is that okay?
Absolutely fine, Shishruji.
Okay, so Anandji, let's move on to the next slide. Your topic today is physical and mental wellness through the Bhagavad Gita. So modern healthcare is really a very advanced field. Do you think that a document, Bhagavad Gita, that was said 5,000 years old, is still relevant in this modern day and age?
Jai Sri Krishna, Jai Radhe Radhe. My namaskars to Gyananandji Maharaj ji, namaskars to Madhu ji, and namaskars to all the listeners of this program. Yes, Bhagavad Gita is a pathway to physical and mental health. Shishruji, as you rightly mentioned, Bhagavad Gita is more than 5,000 years old. Precisely, it is 5,161 years old. But it deals with every aspect of the health. While modern health deals with only at a material level and at a peripheral level, Bhagavad Gita tackles the health issues at the grassroots levels of the human mind. We know that we all understand that the modern day philosophy has made us very prosperous, but it has failed us in ensuring the betterment of the individual life and social welfare. In modern day health, we try and talk about the holistic health, but it does not answer the spirituality of that. The spiritual health is not answered. Let's see the health in the light of Bhagavad Gita compared to modern day. So, what is health? The World Health Organization has defined health as not merely the absence of a disease or infirmity. Health means it's a dynamic state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being. Although the modern definition is like that, the spiritual health is hardly addressed. Bhagavad Gita deals with all the aspects of this definition, especially the spiritual health. Next slide, please. So, what is spiritual health? Spiritual health considers three fundamental elements. It considers the body, it considers the mind, and it considers the soul. There are three domains of spiritual health. One is analyzing and applying the self. Number two is realizing one's full potential and meaning and the purpose of life. And number three is achieving a state of inner happiness, aparokshajna. Bhagavad Gita provides a comprehensive approach to this concept. especially a harmony between the body and the mind, leading to spiritual enlightenment. So what is body, ein mind, ein soul, according to Gita? Next slide. We know that Bhagavad Gita is full of wisdom from the Vedas, especially the Upanishads. If you look at Kathopanishad describes this body in the form of an analogy of a chariot. The 5 horses represent the 5 indriyas, the 5 sense organs. The reins is the mind or the manas. Controlling these 2 is the higher intellect called buddhi or the intellect. Beyond this comes that spirit, nothing but consciousness or Atman. Bhagavad Gita says that the very low level, the physical level is the sense organs, and at a little higher level is the manas or the mind, but at the highest level is the buddhi, and beyond this is the consciousness. Neetaji told us a minute ago, Indriyani Paranyahu Indriyabhya Parammanah. So each one is at a lower level. The lowest level is the sense organs. So what we need to do to achieve that spiritual health is to subdue our lower levels of senses and try to make our mind still, to make with the help of buddhi, and then try to reach that spiritual level. Spiritual level is the highest level. Next line, please. So when we talk of spiritual health, is there a spiritual suffering? According to our Shastras, the suffering we all go through is nothing but samsara. Samsara doesn't mean family. Samsara means the worldly affairs. Especially in most Indian religions, samsara means the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. So we are constantly in this one. Life, birth, death, and rebirth. So the quest, the spiritual quest, is to break this cycle and reach that liberation. Why? Because our true nature is spirit. We should become aware of that to gain mental peace and health. But if we do not experience this, we feel very inadequate, and actually all these causes mental problems. Bhagavad Gita brings out all the instructions to achieve the spiritual experience.
Excellent. Thank you, Anandji. I especially like this chariot analogy. As we know, horses in Sanskrit are called Ashwa. And Madhuji already said in his lecture, Ashwa also means ever-changing or restless. Neetaji showed in her slide, we are constantly being flooded with information, and it makes our mind restless, just like the horses. There is a boom in diagnosis of ADHD in children and even in adults. So how does one actually control this restless mind?
Of course, yes. The mind is restless. We heard from Neetaji how the mind has a constant input through the senses and through the sense objects. We heard a lot from Neetaji, so I'm not going to repeat it, but I would definitely like to quote what Maharaj says. In fact, Maharaj compares the mind to a mobile phone. Nowadays, mobile phone is constantly engaged. Your Instagram, your Facebook, your whatnot, WhatsApp, and too many things. What happens? The mobile phone loses its charge. This is exactly what is happening with our mind. Too many sensory inputs. One day your mind goes blind, totally blind, blackout. The Maharaj says, as we charge the phone, we should also charge our mind. How do we charge the mind? We charge the mind by meditation. In fact, Neetaji quoted these 2 verses, Chanchalam hi manat Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manne vayoriva sudushkaram. Arjuna himself is asking Krishna, look, Krishna, you've been trying to tell me that control your mind. Is it easy to control the mind? No, it is very chanchal. But Lord Krishna reassures Arjuna, look, it is very hard to control. It is very wavering. But Arjun, by continuous practice and detachment, it is possible. Next slide, please. So how is it possible? Again, if you go into the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which deals about Dhyana Yoga, it's full of instructions. It's a beautiful guide to attain mindfulness, a steady mind through meditation. One of the core teachings of Bhagavad Gita is the practice of meditation. How does it help mental health? It calms the mind, it reduces the stress, it improves the concentration. We attain an inner peace, mental stability, better physical health by lowering stress-related ailments, diabetes, hypertension, mental illnesses. So is it really, keep the previous slide, please. Is it really easy to achieve this mental? It is not. But Lord says it should be as easy as a tortoise withdraws all its four limbs and the head. So by constant practice, it is possible. Next slide, please.
So yeah, we know it's very, very difficult. Krishna himself has said in the Bhagavad Gita how difficult it is. But let's say a person has actually tried and is successful in controlling his mind. How do we recognize such a person?
So in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is advising Arjuna who a Sthita Prajna is. Sthita Prajna is the one who has achieved a steady state of mind.
Ananda.
The question Arjuna asking is Sthita Prajnasya Kamhasha Samadhisthasya Keshava. So what are the signs of a man whose mind is steady and is absorbed in the self? How does he speak? How does he sit? It is possible. Such a person is always at peace, is not shaken by any disturbances in the events or situations. Such a man would have given up all the desires and that state of mind, and he's in a very satisfied state of mind. This is not a common state of mind, but it's very difficult to conceive this. This state of mind is only attained when one gives up all the desires, but developing a sense of detachment.
So you mentioned this detachment as a step towards a steady and healthy mind. But attachments and desires are part and parcel of our lives. I mean, we all have our family, our friends, our house, our car, our jobs. This is just part of modern society. I mean, can anyone give them up? And if we can give them up, how do we give it up? And what will we achieve if we give this up?
Good question, Shishotji. So, abhimana or the detachment. Next slide, please. Abhimana, attachment. Attachment is the root cause of the grief. It plays a major role in happiness or distress, a pair of pleasure and such dualities. So what happens is when the senses get attached to sense object, they develop some sort of a liking towards them. The liking could be in the form of a sense of happiness, or sometimes it may not be happiness, it can be a distress. So attachment is developing a liking to a number of objects like money, property, relative, or a friend, like you said, family, a sense of belonging to these objects. In Bhagavad Gita, in fact, in verse 14, second chapter, Lord Krishna is saying, Matra sprashastra kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agamapa ino nityaha tam sudikshasva bharata. What he is saying is, the contact between the senses and sense objects gives rise to perceptions of happiness and distress. This is the root cause of pain, pressure. What should one do? One must learn to tolerate them, both whether it is happiness or distress. We should develop a sense of detachment. Perfect stillness of the mind can only be obtained when one develops a detachment. I remember Maharaj saying yesterday, this is only possible when you convert S-I-N to S-U-N. He said that yesterday. I quite liked it. This is only possible. This detachment is only possible when we take away I from sin and introduce the U into this to make it sun. So that sense of I-ness And mine, everything is mine, that should go. When one has no, when such a person develops no attachment to the objects of senses, he's said to be advanced in yoga. Next one, please. So why should we give up attachment? You asked a very good question, because attachment leads to desires. And for a healthy functioning of the mind, desires have to be controlled. These two shlokas from Bhagavad Gita are beautiful. In fact, I'm sure every psychiatrist likes them. These give us the root cause of how your mind and your buddhi gets distorted. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate. When somebody comes in and sense object, they develop a sense of attachment. When they sense they when they get attached to an object, they develop a sense of craving or a desire. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. They develop kama, desire. When that desire is not fulfilled, they develop anger. Kamat krodho vijayate. Krodhat bhavat sammohaha. With the anger, they develop sammoha. Sammoha is lack of judgment, some sort of a delusional state. Sammohat smriti vibhramaha. With that delusion, your memory gets clouded. Smriti vibhramshat buddhinasho, that leads to buddhinasha, which means your intellect is gone. So that when the intellect is gone, as a person, you're gone. Yeah. So that leads to all the things. Next slide, please. So one should give up the desires, one should give up the attachment. Why? To attain a state of absolute tranquility. When we attain a state of tranquility, all our sufferings disappear. And when one's mind is thus at peace, that self-realization becomes steady. This shloka of Bhagavad Gita says, Ragadvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indriyaischaran Atmavashayet dheyatma prasadam madhigachati. When one who controls the mind and is free from attachment and aversions, he attains the grace of God. And once they attain the grace of God, the peace in which all sorrows end, the intellect becomes, the buddhi becomes firmly established in God.
Thank you, Anandji. We have all been watching the Olympic Games on TV recently, and these are the epitome of speed and competition. There are successes and failure. And sometimes it's just by 100 grams or so, Equally, as a surgeon, sometimes my cases don't go so well as to whatever we have planned.
Okay, I have had a message, Shashwatji, that Maharaj is on his way and would like to come in. Maybe I can pause it for a bit. And then we will allow Maharaj to come in and speak to us. I'm sorry to interrupt here. And
Rajji has a question.
I think Rajji has a question which is very pressing. So, Rajji, do you want to ask your question to Madhusudanji?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Shishurji and Anandji. You're doing excellently well. And then we know in our modern professional life, we have to prioritize so many things because three things are thrown at us at the same time, really. So Neetaji very eloquently said that if we can't read the whole Bhagavad Gita, we should read at least chapter 15. And if we can't read the whole chapter 15, the last 5 verses, 16 to 20 chapters are very, very important. I would like to ask Dr. Madhusudanji, why verses 16 to 20 of chapter 15 are fundamental to Vedanta Shastra?
Thank you very much, Raji, and I really wanted to thank Sushrut and Anand for taking us through a wonderful Q&A session, giving us a practical evaluations of this. So everything eventually, as what Anandji mentioned was, everything eventually have to gravitate to this Paramatma. Unless we have our primary focus on this Paramatma, Krishna, Vishnu, all other things is not going to happen. But if we decide we focus on that, everything else is going to fall into place. So how do we understand this Paramatma, Raji? So that's what the chapter 15, 16 to 20 states. And as you said, if we can't memorize the whole of Gita, at least let's memorize chapter 15. If we can't memorize the chapter 15, at least let's memorize the last 5 verses of chapter 15. Dvavimau purusho loke, kshara akshara evacha, ksharaha sarvani bhutani, kutasto akshara uchyate, uttamaha purushastu anyaha paramatmeti udahrutaha, yo lokatrayam avishya bibarti avyaya ishvaraha, yasmat ksharam atitoham aksharaadapicha uttamaha, अतोऽस्मिन् लोके वेदे च प्रतितः पुरुषोत्तमः यो माम् एवम् असम्मूढो जानाति पुरुषोत्तमं स सर्वविद् भजति मां सर्वभावेन भारत इति गुह्यतमं शास्त्रम् इदमुक्तं मया नः एतद् बुद्ध्वा बुद्धिमान् कृतकृत्यश्च Bharata. So beautiful verses. So over the next 2 minutes, I just want to wind up our beautiful session before we hear the divine message from Gyananandji Maharaj. What is this verse saying? Dvavima purusho loke. There are two types of sentient beings in all of existence. Kshara and aksharas. Ksharas are the one that shed bodies. Akshara is the one that never sheds the body. Ksharaha sarvani bhutani. The ksharas are the jivas and they are infinite in numbers. Kutastaha akshara uchyate. Yeah. So there is one being called Chetana Prakriti. She is called Kutastha Akshara. And then there is another guy, Uttamaha Purushastu Anyaha Paramatmeti Udahurtaha. There is one entity beyond all these, beyond the Kutasto Akshara, beyond the Jivas, beyond the Ksharas. Even the Jivas are Ksharas at this point of time because we have a perishable body. Only when we attain moksha, we have an imperishable body. But currently we are Ksharas, like Jada, which is also Ksharas. Then there are two entities which are ever liberated. One is the Shri Tattva, which is described in this particular verse in 16 as Kutasto Aksharaha. And then beyond the Kutasto Aksharaha is this Purushottama. He is Vishnu, he is Krishna, he is Purushottama, he is Brahman. Paramashruti, Brahma, Shivaha, Rudra, Dayashta, Sharirak, Sharanat, Ksharaha, Lakshmi Dehatvad, Aksharaha, Tatparo, Harihi. Yeah, Hari is the supreme. So when we start focusing on the supreme, everything else falls in place. Yasmat ksharam atito aham aksharaadapi cha uttamaha, says Krishna. I am beyond matter and I am beyond Shri Tattva. Yo mam, that is why I am called Purusha Uttama. I am the highest. Yo mam evam asammudocho janati purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavena bhavata. That person who knows that I am the highest, Krishna is the highest being to be adored and worshipped. If he does that, then that means that he is actually worshipping everything and he is achieving everything in his life. And Krishna says, this is the secret knowledge and this is the sacred knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. Iti guhyatamam shastram idamuktam mayanaga yetad bhutya buddhiman krita krityascha bharata. So Krishna says, he who knows this, he achieves salvation. This is the secret knowledge and this is the sacred knowledge. So on that note, I would like to invite His Divine Grace, Swami Gyananandji Maharaj, to come on screen and give us his divine blessings and also his divine message about the Gita and all that we have discussed today in our satsang today. Hare Krishna. Over to you, Swamiji.
Jai Shri Krishna to all. Prapanna parijataya totravetraika parne Gyan mudraya Krishnaya Gita amrit duhe namaha. Bhagavad Gita अपने आप में एक कंप्लीट परफेक्ट होली बुक है. भगवद गीता आज से 5161 वर्ष पूर्व 5161 years ago, the message of Bhagavad Gita was delivered in the battlefield of Mahabharata धर्म क्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे, कुरुक्षेत्र की युद्ध भूमि में दिया गया उपदेश आज भी पूरी तरह रेलेवेंट है। हमने जब 5 क्वेश्चन पढ़े जो आज के प्रसंग में हैं, उनमें एक क्वेश्चन ये भी कि उपदेश why the message was delivered in the battlefield, युद्ध भूमि में क्यों दिया गया उपदेश। वास्तव में हमें लगता है कि ये भगवान कृष्ण की दूरदर्शिता थी। वैसे गीता जैसा ज्ञान के अशांत वातावरण में, क्योंकि वैसे हमें सत्संग सुनना है और वॉइस ऑफ गॉड इंटरनली या एक्सटर्नली सुनने के लिए कहा जाता है कि वॉइस ऑफ गॉड कैन बी हर्ड ओनली इन द डीप साइलेंस। अंदर भी इंटरनली भी, क्योंकि अहम आत्मा गुणाकेश सर्वभूताश्रय स्थितः जो कृष्ण अर्जुन को उपदेश दे रहे हैं वो कृष्ण हमारी आत्मा है। हमारी आत्मा कृष्ण ही तो है ना। तो इंटरनली भी यदि हमने वो मैसेज श्रवण करना है तो हमें अंदर की शांति, और अंदर की शांति कैसी, विहाय कामान या सर्वान निस्पृह निर्ममो निरहंकार स शांति मधिगच्छति। कामनाओं के अंदर हलचल रहती है, अनस्टेबिलिटी जो कामनाएं बनाए रखती हैं, इससे अंदर जब भी कोई कामना उठती है, एक प्रश्न ये भी है कि क्या डिजायरलेस एक्शन आर फिजिबल इन दिस एज। ये क्वेश्चन think was there in that list today कि क्या कामना रहित कर्म आजकल संभव है, पर्टिकुलर इन कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड। अभी हम थोड़ी सी चर्चा करेंगे। अभी आप ये देखें, अंदर यदि कामनाओं की हलचल है, निर्ममता, अहंता, तो शांति नहीं होगी। तो शांति कहाँ है, जहां स्टेबिलिटी है। तो कामनाओं की स्थिति जो अंदर होती है वो कहीं ना कहीं हलचल बनाती है, अशांति लाती है। लेकिन गीता का उपदेश अपने आप में एक अद्भुत संदेश है, क्योंकि अशांति के वातावरण में शांति का उद्घोष, और दुर्भावनाओं के वातावरण में सद्भावना का संदेश गीता। भगवान कृष्ण की जो दूरदर्शिता हमने कही, उन्होंने तब समय की नवस को देख लिया था कि आज ये स्थिति यहां है और अर्जुन सामने है, विक्टिम है उस स्थिति का। लेकिन आने वाले समय में ये महाभारत कई रूपों में, सो मेनी फॉर्म्स, महाभारत आगे आपको दिखाई देगी। और पूरा विश्व किस तरह, कहीं ये नेगेटिव फोर्सेस, कहीं पॉजिटिव क्वालिटीज, कहीं डिवाइन क्वालिटीज, कहीं देवी संपदा, कहीं आसुरी संपदा, ये संघर्ष, यही तो महाभारत है। और ये महाभारत आज पूरे विश्व में कई रूप में आप देख सकते हैं। सॉल्यूशन क्या है? Bhagavad Gita is solution, logical solution, practical solution, and scientific solution. भगवद गीता अपने आप तो, क्योंकि तब जो प्रॉब्लम थी वो आज तब एक अर्जुन विक्टिम था उस प्रॉब्लम का, लेकिन आज जिधर देखो जहां देखो, जो उस समय अर्जुन में प्रॉब्लम थी वो आज आपको वर्ल्ड वाइड दिख, लोग अर्जुन की डिसीज आज एक यूनिवर्सल प्रॉब्लम के रूप में दिखाई दे रही है। और इसीलिए तब अर्जुन ने गीता सुनी और अर्जुन ने कहा कि ऑल माय सस्पिशंस, कंफ्यूजन्स आर गॉन, नाउ आई एम फुल्ली स्टेबल, स्थितो अस्मि। और आज के आपको लगता नहीं है कि आज कितनी आवश्यकता है इस स्टेबिलिटी की? विश्व में सब कुछ है, मेटेरियलिस्टिक डेवलपमेंट्स ने सब कुछ दिया है, लेकिन स्टेबिलिटी कहाँ है? चारों ओर कहीं ना कहीं अस्थिरता, अनस्टेबिलिटी बढ़ रही है, तो गीता स्टेबिलिटी देती है। अर्जुन ने कहा नष्टो मोह स्मृति लब्धा तत्प्रसादान में अच्युत स्थितोस्मि गत्संदेहा करिष्ये वचनम तव। तो गीता का संदेश इसलिए तब जितना रेलेवेंट था, आज उससे कहीं कहीं अधिक गीता की आवश्यकता, उपयोगिता और गीता की प्रासंगिकता ये आज कहीं न कहीं अधिक आज अनुभव की जा रही है। तो एक प्रश्न, और महाभारत युद्ध में गीता इसीलिए थी क्योंकि भगवान कृष्ण गीता उपदेश से पहले एक जो औपनिषदिक काल माना जाता है, औपनिषदिक एज, उसमें उससे पहले ऐसा माना जाने लगा था कि ज्ञान कहीं वन में, जंगल में, इन द फॉरेस्ट, ज्ञान कहीं कंदराओं में, इन द केव्स, कहीं हिमालय की ऊंचाइयों में ज्ञान की साधना संभव है। लेकिन भगवान कृष्ण ज्ञान की उस दिव्यता को पर्वतों की ऊंचाई से बिल्कुल व्यवहार की भूमि पर, व्यवहार के धरातल पर खींच कर लाए, ये विश्व को बताने के लिए कि गीता जैसे ज्ञान की आवश्यकता केवल उस ऊंचाई पर नहीं, गीता जैसे ज्ञान की आवश्यकता तो ग्राउंड लेवल पे, केव से, कंदराओं से बाहर खींच के लाए उस ज्ञान को, कि ज्ञान की आवश्यकता केवल गुफाओं में, केवल केव्स में बंद होकर वैसी साधना तक के लिए नहीं है। तो ज्ञान जो केवल कहीं एक स्थान तक है होगा, कि गीता ज्ञान जो है वो आवश्यकता कहीं संघर्षों की भूमि पर है, द फील्ड ऑफ स्ट्रगल्स। ज्ञान की आवश्यकता यहाँ है कि जहां अंदर द्वंद्व है, मन नहीं समझ पा रहा क्या करूं क्या ना करूं, टू बी डन बट नॉट टू बी डन, ये जहां कंफ्यूजन हो। अर्जुन ने जब ये कहा कार्पण्य दोषोपहत स्वभाव प्रच्छामि त्वाम धर्म सम्मूढ़ चेता यच्छ्रेयस्यान् निश्चितम ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्ते हम शाधिमा त्वाम प्रपन्नम। अर्जुन ने अपनी वह दशा सामने रखी, तभी तो भगवान कृष्ण तैयार हुए गीता को उपदेश देने के लिए। तो इसका अभिप्राय यही है कि गीता ज्ञान उस अवस्था के लिए है जहां मन अशांत है लेकिन शांति चाहता है। और हमें लगता है, बस एक ही बात कह करके, भगवत गीता के फर्स्ट चैप्टर का लास्ट स्टेंजा और जो लास्ट वर्ड्स हैं, शोक संवीर मानसा, शोक में पूरी तरह से डूबा हुआ मन। गीता का जो अर्जुन, उस समय अर्जुन की बात है, तो गीता का जो रियल लिसनर है, श्रोता है, वह मन है जो अशांत है, शांति चाहता है, जो कहीं ना कहीं वृत्तियों में, दैवी संपदा, डिवाइन क्वाल में उलझा हुआ है, दैवी और आसुरी संपदा में, लेकिन चाहता है कहीं सही रास्ता। उसके लिए भगवत गीता है। और वो समस्या ऑब्वियसली तब इतनी नहीं थी जितनी आज पूरे विश्व में दिखाई दे रही है। और हमें लगता है कि इसीलिए भगवत गीता आज केवल भारत की नहीं, केवल इतने लोग जो यहाँ वर्चुअली जुड़े हैं उनकी नहीं, भगवत गीता आज पूरे विश्व की आवश्यकता है, पूरे विश्व की जरूरत है। इसलिए आप सब अच्छे से गीता समझे। मधुसूदन जी बात अच्छे से समझा रहे थे 15वें अध्याय के अंतिम 5 श्लोक, और उनमें जो वेदांत तत्व है, या वेदांत तत्व कहें, जो एसेंस ऑफ लाइफ है, वो जो इसमें आया, और सार में भगवान ने कहा, सब कुछ समझा करके, यो मामेव सम्मोढ़ो जानाति पुरुषोत्तम स सर्वविद भयति माम सर्वभावेन भारत। ये एक यूनिवर्सल फैक्ट है कि मन जिसकी इम्पोर्टेंस समझ लेगा, मन के जो झुकाव है, लगाव है, अटैचमेंट है, मन की वही होगी जिसकी मन इम्पोर्टेंस बढ़ाएगा। तो 15वां अध्याय पुरुषोत्तम योग ये सिद्ध करने के लिए है कि उत्तम सत्ता, श्रेष्ठ सत्ता, यूनिक, अनपैरेलल जो एग्जिस्टेंस है वो परमात्मा की ही है। और 15वें अध्याय में देखेंगे आप, हमारी पाचन शक्ति परमात्मा है, पृथ्वी की उर्वरा शक्ति परमात्मा है। कहीं आपको बायोलॉजी दिखेगी, कहीं आपको जूलॉजी दिखेगी 15वें अध्याय में। सब कुछ आपको 15वें अध्याय में दिखाई देगा। कहीं बॉटनी की स्थिति दिखाई देगी आपको 15वें अध्याय में। लेकिन सबके पीछे जो मूल एग्जिस्टेंस है, जो रूट एग्जिस्टेंस है, वो परमात्मा है। और ये सब कुछ ये बताने के लिए कि परमात्मा ही सुप्रीम एग्जिस्टेंस है, ऑलमाइटी एग्जिस्टेंस है। और जब ये मन समझ लेगा कि संसार नाशवान है, परमात्मा ही अविनाशी है, तो जो ऐसा समझ लेता है कि द्वामो पुरुषो लोके अक्षर यहाँ से लेकर जो ऐसा समझ लेता है, यो मामेव सम्मूढ़ो जानाति पुरुषोत्तम, तब तो लगता है कि संसार केवल कर्म भूमि है, व्यवहार भूमि है, फील्ड ऑफ एक्शन है, मन लगाने की जगह नहीं है ये संसार। मन को तो मैया सत्य मना पार्थ मनमना भव, तब लगता है कि मन से उसका भजन हो, मां मन स्मर, मन से उसका स्मरण हो, और युद्ध चय, संसार के स्ट्रगल में भी हम लगे रहें, तभी जीवन में विजय, जीवन का रथ विजय पथ की ओर आगे बढ़ सकता है। तो हमें बहुत प्रसन्नता है कि आप सब यहाँ अपनी मातृभूमि भारत से दूर यहाँ रहकर भी भगवत गीता और गीता के साथ साथ वेद, उपनिषद, भागवत इत्यादि ग्रंथों की इस रूप में चर्चा के लिए समय निकाल रहे हैं। ये वास्तव में भगवान की कृपा है। आप सब पर ये कृपा बनी रहे, और जीवन का वास्तविक आनंद यही है, जीवन का वास्तविक लाभ यही है, जीवन का फिट यही है, जो इस रूप का सौभाग्य प्राप्त कर रहे हैं। आप सबके लिए डॉक्टर मधुसूदन जी पूरी टीम और जो भी वर्चुअली यहाँ जुड़े हैं, आप सबके लिए हमारी बहुत बहुत शुभकामना, बेस्ट विशेस, ब्लेसिंग्स टू यू, टू ऑल ऑफ यू। जय श्री कृष्ण।
जय श्री कृष्ण। हमारा कोटि कोटि धन्यवाद एंड कोटि कोटि साष्टांग नमस्कार टू Gyananand Ji Maharaj. Swami Ji, thank you so much for your divine message. And I would also want to thank everyone who took time to join us over the last 2 hours thinking about Bhagavad Gita. So again, thank you everyone. I want to thank the Kapoor family for also giving us an opportunity to actually take a different view on Gita and also incredible opportunity to receive the message from Swamiji. So I would like to recite Om and close today's session.
एक और
स्वामी जी बताइए।
आप सबके लिए एक इनविटेशन कि आप सब गीता चिंतन कर रहे हैं, तो एक बार आप कुरुक्षेत्र आए, where the message of Bhagavad Gita was delivered. धर्म क्षेत्र कुरुक्षेत्र, आप सब कभी ग्रुप के साथ आए हैं तो हमें बहुत अच्छा लगेगा। जो भी यहाँ उपस्थित है, आप अकेले आए, परिवार सहित आए, या ये सारा ग्रुप एक साथ आए, तो आपको भी आनंद आएगा वहाँ।
Swamiji, this is such a divine invitation. We have to come. So next year we will definitely be there, Swamiji, and we will also do the Gita quiz in Hindi as you have instructed.
अब वहाँ कुरुक्षेत्र भी कुछ क्विज और ऐसा 3 दिन का कुछ रख लेंगे, वहाँ के भी कुछ गीता साधक जुड़ेंगे और यहाँ से भी आप सब आएंगे। वहाँ बिल्कुल एक अच्छी व्यवस्था, सब ऑडिटोरियम और रेजिडेंशियल व्यवस्था एक अच्छे से है। तो यहाँ अपने कपूर बंधु आपसे कांटेक्ट कर लेंगे या आप कर लेंगे, तो मिलके कोई ऐसा प्रोग्राम रख लेंगे।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद स्वामी जी। 100% we will be there. You have instructed us, so we will come there to take our blessings from Swami ji. So on that note, let's recite Om and close today's session. Om. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.